All right, today we're diving into the case of a name you might know, but maybe not the full story, RameshSunnyBalwani. He was the other half of that infamous Theranos scandal.
So, everyone remembers Elizabeth Holmes, right? She was the face of Theranos. But Sunny Balwani, he was the power behind the curtain. And when it all came crashing down, the courts found something truly chilling. This wasn't just about scamming investors out of their money. No, this deception went way further. It put actual patients' lives on the line.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with Balwani as the man in control, then get into how he deceived investors and endangered patients. We'll look at his defense, which was basically just denial, what the jury decided, and finally, the judge's powerful final words on the matter.
Okay, so first things first. To really get a grip on just how massive this fraud was, you have to understand who was pulling the strings.
And here he is, RameshSunnyBalwani. Now, his title was President and COO, but that doesn't really capture it. He wasn't just some high-level exec. He was the guy running the show day to day. The labs, the money, all of it. He had his hands directly on the controls of the entire fraudulent operation.
All right, so here's where things get really crucial to understand. The prosecution argued this wasn't just one big lie. It was more like a war fought on two fronts, a really cynical deception aimed at two completely different sets of people.
So on one front, you have the investor fraud. That's the story we all heard, right? Lying about revenue, making up fake partnerships, pretending the tech worked when it absolutely didn't. But then there's the other front, and this one is so much worse, so much more personal. This was the patient fraud. We're talking about knowingly sending people blood test results from machines they knew, for a fact, were junk. See, this stopped being about money. This was about people's lives, their health.
And yeah, the investors lost a ton of money, hundreds of millions. But the real cost, the human cost, that was just astronomical. Think about it. Real people got these bogus test results, and they made serious, sometimes terrifying medical decisions based on that garbage data. Data from a company that knew its tech was a sham. This is the moment a white-collar crime explodes into a public health crisis. It just shows a complete and utter lack of empathy.
So you've got all this evidence stacked against him. He's in a courtroom. What's his defense? How does he possibly explain all this? Well, his strategy was pretty simple, really. Just deny, deny, deny.
First off, unlike Elizabeth Holmes, Balwani didn't even testify. His lawyers did all the talking. And their argument was basically, hey, he was a true believer. He really thought this thing would work someday. They tried to spin it all as just business setbacks or operational chaos. You know, the kind of messy stuff every ambitious Silicon Valley startup goes through. They were literally trying to sell the jury on the idea that this was just a business that failed, not a deliberate, calculated crime.
And the jury, they didn't buy it, not for a single second. They saw right through that whole attempt to disguise calculated lies as startup growing pains.
And that total rejection of his defense? Well, it led to a verdict that left absolutely no room for doubt.
The verdict was a slam dunk. Guilty. On all 12 federal counts. A clean sweep. The jury was unanimous. They concluded that he didn't just make mistakes. He acted with a clear, undeniable intent to defraud everyone, investors and patients alike. And listen, this right here is the absolute key difference. Elizabeth Holmes, she was convicted for defrauding investors. But Balwani's conviction, it was much broader. The jury said he was guilty of defrauding both the investors and the patients. This legally cemented his direct responsibility for the part of the scam that put people's health on the line, all for the sake of money. And for all of that, what was the price? Almost 13 years. 12 years and 11 months in federal prison. And a sentence that long, it's not just about the money that was lost. It reflects the judge's view on that staggering breach of trust and the very real human harm that was done.
Which brings us to the sentencing itself and the final, absolutely damning words from the judge who heard it all.
The judge, Edward Davallet, just cut right through all the noise from the defense. He said it plainly. This was not a simple startup failure, but deliberate deception. And then he added that these kinds of white-collar crimes can cause profound real-world damage. I mean, that's it right there. The court's final word completely demolishing the idea that ambition can ever be an excuse for a crime that showed such a cold, callous disregard for other human beings. So, the whole case of Sunny Balwani leaves us with this really tough question. In this world of high-stakes startups, this move fast and break things culture, where exactly is the line between fake it till you make it and just straight-up fraud? It can seem blurry sometimes, can't it? But what this verdict does is draw a very, very bright line in the sand. It makes one thing crystal clear. When your ambition knowingly puts human lives at risk, that's not a business setback, that's a crime. End of story.